This congregation joins with other UUs in the tradition of striking the gong 3 times, once in memory of those who have gone before, once in honor of those that are here today, and once for the future. Good morning. Welcome to the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist Congregation, the church that puts its faith in you. This is a place where you can be yourself, but not by yourself. Whomever you are, whoever you love, however you describe the holy, you are welcome here. I'm Martha Sinkula. I'm your service leader today, and we are so glad that you are here with us. I especially welcome those of you who might be visiting us for the first time, and those that are watching from home. Those who are here, please stay after the service for coffee and conversation. And I think Olivia has brought a snack of quite tasty ill repute. Let's get to know each other after service. Please, if you have one of these, please turn it off right now. I see everybody reaching for their pockets. I'm doing the same thing. Get it turned off. I want to thank the greeters, Gemma and Dana. Thank Jake for all he does to keep us up to date and out to the world. Sean with music, and Annan, our service. She does everything. She helps us out with all kinds of stuff. And Jan in the office for helping put the service together. Now, today is Annan's last day with us. I know. We have enjoyed having her. She has been Jenny on the spot for all kinds of little odds and ends. She's going off to work on her studies and her orchestra playing and all that good stuff. Please stand up, Annan, so we can give you a hand. We will miss you and appreciate you, and maybe you can drop in every once in a while. Now, she is working at My Coffee, so those of you who are My Coffee aficionados can see her over there. So we will be sure to go over there and spend some time with her when she's there. Thanks, everyone who are here with us today, for caring to keep this place vital. Now, today, we are thrilled once again to have the writers group, and I'd like to have our writers just stand up. It's Connie Erickson who is the coordinator of that. And could our writers group just stand up to say how, so we can see you. We'll introduce you all later. And here we are, these infamous people. Sorry, that's okay, Edith, that's all right. We all know you. Edith is sitting right here. We have Betsy, and we have John, Glennis, Connie, and Charles. And we're very glad that they're going to be here today. We also acknowledge the people who came before us on this land called the Umpqua, whose name graces our congregation and the river that flows through it. Here for thousands of years, loving this land and living in harmony, the Umpqua are still giving us gifts of action and wisdom. We make this land acknowledgement in recognition of the Umpqua and in beginning an atonement for harms done, part of the path towards healing. I'd like you to refer to the order of service that is on your chair or in your hand. In that order of service are the announcements of odds and ends that are happening. One of the things that I want to mention is that as we are a sponsor of the Pride Festival, it is this Saturday, July 1st. It opens at 11 a.m. at the fairgrounds. And we do have a sign-up sheet. We're going to have, excuse me, we're going to have a representation. We're going to have a booth there at the fairgrounds. And we have ordered pamphlets from the UUA to hand out to those persons who might be there might be interested in seeing what we're all about. We have a sign-up sheet for 1.5-hour shifts that has an opening or two. It's back on the back table. And if you have any questions, please call Aline Fifield or the office. But if you have a chance to look at the sign-in sheet and see if there's a spot that you can help us out, we would most appreciate it. And also, if you do show, please wear your Yellow Side with Love t-shirt, bring snacks and some water. And let's show our support as allies. That's what we are. Our church are allies to that community. At this time, in our compassion for those in need and our congregation's service to the larger Roseburg community, it's time to collect contributions for food and or money to provide those living amongst us who are less fortunate. And I think that we have a couple of hardy souls that can do that. You can be our children. Thank you very much, ladies. We are part of a combined effort of about 6 or 7 churches that's helped to keep the fish food pantry in contributions. And I think, Maria, are you still serving on the board? Thank you. That's really great. Thank you, ladies. We begin our service by lighting our chalice. Our chalice lighting words are by Dag Hammarskjöld. Each morning, we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and give back.
For our opening words, they're by Jim DeWitt. One of the greatest titles in the world is parent. And one of the biggest blessings is to have loving parents that respect you and want to be called mom and dad. They are your first teachers.
Thank you, Gladys. At this time, let us rise as you are able and sing 3, 4, 7, Gather the Spirit.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power, our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour, our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather led by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
Now is the time in our service when we remember our joys and concerns with silent or spoken candle lighting, regarding significant milestones. So those who are wishing to participate, please form a line over here to my right. And please, if you're going to light a spoken candle, try to be brief, give your name, and those of you just come on over, and I'll be right with you. know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds that we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they would have done alone. May there now be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation, and may we give in love and in hope. For these gifts which we have received, may we be truly grateful. And may we be committed to using these gifts to make a difference in the world and to expand our beloved community. Please sing From You I Receive. It's in your order of service.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. Some of you may know this song. If you were born before 1970, you definitely know it. I noticed that. Feel free to sing along. In harmony, out of time, whatever. And if you know the counter melody, good for you. I don't. You are on the road, must have a goal that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, their fathers tell, did slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams. The one they picks, the one you'll know by. Don't you ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh. And know they love you. And you of tender years can know the fears that your elders grew by. And so adore you. They seek the truth before they can teach your parents well, their children's tell. Will slowly go by and feed them on your dreams. And one day picks the one you'll know by. Don't you ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh. And know they love you. And know they love you. And know they love you.
Well, that brought some little tears to my eyes. Thank you. We're now going to prepare for our 3-part meditation. So we'll practice centering, listen to some words, and focus on our breath while we listen to some music. So let's bring both feet to the floor. Relax your arms and shoulders. And close your eyes and soften the muscles in your face. We will be inhaling through our nose and exhaling from our mouth. Exhaling as if you were blowing out of a straw. As you inhale, say to yourself, I am. As you exhale, say to yourself, here. We come from all the places of our separate stories to this time, from love and grief, hope and worry, solitude and activity, to seek renewal and find celebration. May we pause to give thanks, to feel wonder, and to experience the privilege of living. So let's all take a deep breath and a nice, slow exhale. This Sunday, our writers group wants to share with you their stories and opinions about dads. So Betsy is going to be our first speaker.
Belonging to this writers group has been a special gift. Because, can you hear me? No.
There, you turn that off.
Belonging to this writers group has been a special gift because as I contemplate what in heck I have to say on this subject, I often am gifted with long forgotten memories, some of which actually make it to the paper I write. My dad was my childhood hero. He was the man who sang off key while rocking me to sleep when I was a restless baby. He stood 5'11" had sparkling blue eyes, and a sense of humor which often took me by surprise. I had the feeling that he adored me, so when he was suddenly displeased and gave me a sharp whack on the head, I was always startled. I also knew he felt very sorry for his quick reaction. Daddy enjoyed singing, but he could not carry a tune. I recall old tunes he learned in the Marine Corps, most of them a bit bawdy, all of them sentimental. He loved Vienna, City of My Dreams, and love songs from the Verdi operas. He loved hearing my mother playing them on the upright piano, which came with the house we rented in Virginia. Dad loved to garden. No matter where he lived, Dad always started a garden. I remember corn in Virginia, and years later, watermelon with each grandkid's initials carved on them when he lived in Vista, California. While we lived on the East Coast, Dad managed a huge storage and refrigeration warehouse in D.C. He often obliged customers by keeping the warehouse open extra hours. The smell of the warehouse often came home on the suits and vests he wore, even though he was technically in the office most of the time. During the winter, our house was heated by a coal-burning furnace in the basement. I remember small arguments between my parents about whose turn it was to get up and go down those frigid stairs to shovel coal in the furnace. When I was about 7, we moved to Greenbelt, Maryland. Someone in the Roosevelt administration had said that we could build 3 amazing communities for the price of 1 battleship. Greenbelt was one of these experimental towns, a beautiful community designed with small playgrounds every few blocks and larger ones strategically placed. The community was laid out with underpasses so that we could walk everywhere without ever crossing a street. The community was essentially self-governing. Dad volunteered and eventually became president of the co-op board. We began with a grocery store, and over time a variety store was added, then a movie house, and later a gas station. Dad was a constant reader. He read everything from Earl Stanley Gardner's Perry Mason to books on psychology, philosophy, and history. In his later years, While in California, his passion was early California history. Dad had always maintained his vote in California. The cost of college education in Maryland was prohibitive, and he wanted me to go to college. But still, California had free college. With this in mind, we moved to California in 1942 and settled in San Gabriel. We laughed at the Maryland Rationing Board, thinking we might be looking for gas for a vacation, declared that they would grant enough rationing coupons for a trip to California, but none to return. The smog in Los Angeles grew worse and worse after the war. Dad worked in the heart of LA, searching titles for the property which was soon to become part of the huge freeway system. He also smoked heavily. He developed COPD. After a frightening hospitalization, he decided to retire. He never recovered his health. He died on Valentine's Day, 1996, in my brother's home in New York. Somehow, his spirit continues and lives on in me and in his grandchildren. Kenneth. Somebody get me out of here.
Our next speaker is Charles. Charles, you can stand up. Don't get too comfy.
Yeah, this is my beginning opportunity to participate in this. Well, alrighty. Yeah. You don't have to stand on the apple box. That's the problem, yeah. There we go. Now the microphone is taller now. Dad was good at math. He taught me 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 8 is 16, but he never taught me what 2 times was. He was teaching me never to memorize the correct answer to any question. He was teaching me where to look to find the truth for myself. Dad would always be cheerful. He'd wake up cheerful, and he'd whistle while he was shaving. He would whistle that, listen to the mockingbird, listen to the mockingbird. I don't know if it's an old song. It goes back to 1855, and he'd be there. Anyway, he was just quite a guy. Dad taught me to whistle. He would never lie. He taught me that some people believe that children who eat the outside crust of a slice of white bread could learn to whistle. I didn't like the hard outer surface of bread. I only ate the white middle part. And I did not know how to whistle. After many weeks of eating bread crust, I suddenly discovered that I could whistle. Dad was right. Today, my favorite slices of bread are the end pieces. Dad taught me to plan ahead to get what I want. The mockingbird is the official bird of Texas. I wanted to catch a mockingbird from our backyard as a pet. Some people believe that you can catch a bird by putting salt on its tail, said my dad. It occurred to me that some people sometimes are wrong. But I spent countless summer hours trying to devise a mechanism that would, like a sack of salt on the roof, maybe, and maybe you'd pull a string and then this pile of salt would somehow or other catch the bird. Then all of a sudden I had a good idea that I went to ask permission to my parents, and that I said, well, I need to get up on the roof. He said, well, you can't get on the roof. So needless to say, I never caught a mockingbird for a pet. Dad wanted me to have an electric train. How Santa Claus got it down the chimney was not the problem. Dad and one of my uncles were unwrapping the big box, assembled the tracks, connected the transformer, put the train and all the cars on the tracks, and shouted, "All aboard!" And they were, wait a minute. Let me show you how to do it," said Dad. Well, that was the problem. Dad and my uncle had all the fun. Dad was a businessman. He wore a hat every day to the office. At night, he would write notes to himself about tomorrow's business plans. The next morning, the notes were already in his hat, ready to start the next day. Dad was a Texas gentleman and always respected the ladies. He saw to it that Mom had all the money that she needed in the bank and that she managed her own money. As a housewife, she raised my two sisters, one of which was 15 years older than me and the other was 12 years older than me. I was special to Dad in his eyes. He taught me how to fish, how to hunt. He taught me to respect the guns and encouraged me to be a sharpshooter. Dad taught me to honk my car horn, only at animals, but not people. Macho gunslingers are described in this Jim Croce song. You don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't whistle, you don't spit against the wind. You don't pull on that mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim. Dad told me the story about the time the car suddenly stopped and would not start at a traffic light. The fool behind him began honking his horn. Dad got out of his car, walked back slowly to that person. He says, if you'd come up to my car and get my car started, I'll be glad to sit back here and honk your horn for you. Yeah. Dad's story about the macho gunslinger who burst into the old West Cantina has always served me as the best fun story that illustrates our UU first principle: respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person. A macho gunslinger walks into this cantina and he shouts, "All of you fools, get out of here!" And all of the cowboys all of a sudden disappeared. They went out the back door, and only one cowboy remained. The macho gunslinger says, he was trying to intimidate the solitary cowboy, and he shouts, "Didn't you hear what I said? I said, all of you fools, get out of here." "Yep," said the cowboy. "Sure were a lot of them." Mm-hmm. The UU cowboy could have challenged the macho gunslinger with a sarcastic remark, but the UU cowboy chose to imply that the gunslinger is not as tough as he thinks. The gunslinger was probably afraid of the other cowboys in the saloon, and the UU cowboy is making fun of the gunslinger for being a coward, for not being able to back up his words with actions. My dad was a good example for a UU to emulate the respect and inherent worth and dignity of every person, including macho gunslingers. Dad loved the salt of the earth people. Salt of the earth is an idiom used to describe someone who is very good, honest, and reasonable, and not thinking that they're special in any way. It's often used to refer to someone who embodies simplicity and moral integrity, or who represents the best or noblest elements of society. It can also be applied to a person who is friendly and a straightforward person, just like good old Dad.
And our next speaker is Edith.
Oh, testing. You hear me? Okay. This is not as humorous as the last essay you heard. Dads. Most people have one dad, usually their biological parent. I, however, had 4 dads. I was born right at the outbreak of World War II in Germany. When I was about 3 months old, my biological father was drafted. After that, he never saw me again, nor I him. He came home from war years later, and my parents split up, as did millions of couples in Germany right after the war. Many of the men came home after years in prison camps, only to find out that they and their wives had become estranged, or they had found another partner. And that is what happened to my parents as well. My biological mother volunteered as a nurse for the Red Cross. She asked her cousin and her husband if they would take care of me for a while until she found other arrangements. They had no children and became my foster my foster parents for the next 6 years. My foster dad was an engineer, and he was not drafted since the government had decided that he was needed at home for the war effort. The city of Frankfurt was being heavily bombed day and night by the British and the Americans. I remember a traumatic event when we ran to the neighborhood bunker during the day. So that was an American attack. The British attacked at 1 p.m. in the night. And I realized that my foster dad had not made it in time. They had locked the bunker. And he was out there with bombs falling. I was told that I became hysterical, screaming, my papa, crying and worried sick. When I was around 3 years old, my foster father found a family in a small village in southern Tyrol, Austria, who agreed to give my foster mother and me room and board. He sent them money every month to cover the cost. After several years, in 1945, we were finally able to go back to Frankfurt. Our apartment had been bombed, and during our absence, my foster father had met a lady he wanted to marry. My foster mom had met a German soldier in Austria she wanted to marry. So they got divorced, which was extremely traumatic and heartbreaking for a 6 or 7-year-old child. I loved them both very much. However, I stayed in close touch with this man who I considered to be my true dad, and I called Papa until his death in the 1980s. I remember my Papa being a very loving man who could fix anything that broke. On one Christmas, when it was impossible to get any toys, he made a little dollhouse for me out of scraps of wood and fabric. I still have a picture of it. My Papa later had 3 children with a very kind and loving woman who treated me as if I were her own child. In 1945, my biological mother came back from the war. She was a stranger to me. Since nobody had a place to live, we all moved in with my foster mom's parents, who I considered to be my grandparents. It was a tiny, tiny 2-bedroom duplex, but we had a garden, we had chickens and rabbits, which kept us alive during those tough years. I had to get used to foster dad number 2. and the fact that I suddenly had two mothers who were unfortunately very jealous of each other. When I was about 11 years old, my biological mother, who never went back to nursing, landed a job at a catalog company in Frankfurt, sort of like Sears. There she met a nice divorced man who had a son 4 years younger than I. He lived in another city with his mother. Suddenly, I had to get used to having a stepfather and a stepbrother. My stepdad soon got a better job in Munich, and they moved away. From that time on, I would only visit them a few times a year. However, thanks to WhatsApp, I am still in close touch with my stepbrother and his wife. And that's how I got to have 4 dads and 2 mothers.
I think you've heard the quote, any man can be a father, but it takes someone special to be a dad. I believe my dad was incredible. Dad came into this world as a whopper. According to my grandma, he weighed 12 pounds. As a man, Dad was not a big man in stature, but in his character, he was big. Fortunately for our family, he was a good storyteller. We have a book of his, South Dakota Tales, and videos of him telling stories. Lots of those stories occurred while as a 6-year-old, he was riding his horse to school. Before the age of 12, he had several episodes of running away and experiences running to the cellar to avoid tornadoes. Many types of disasters happen too because of dust storms, extreme temperatures, very deep snow. Remember, he's from South Dakota. To my brother and I, the stories of the clouds of critters captured our imagination most. The stories of little worms coming out of the ground and eating all their plants in the garden, or clouds of beetles, grasshoppers, flies, mosquitoes. It all felt like science fiction to us. The most impressive, though, was the story of a hard rainstorm, followed by the appearance of thousands of toads. I'm sure my dad should have been one of those writers for Little House on the Prairie. My dad was always inquisitive, and I feel it's one of the best gifts that he gave us. I'm sure that we heard my dad say thousands of times, I wonder. When he was a kid, his friends hid their toys when Dad came to visit because they didn't want my dad taking their toys apart and trying to put them back together again. I think the presence of Lincoln Logs, electric set, and my brother's electric train were gifts that my dad could enjoy too. As an adult, my dad was a guy known as Mr. Fix-It. He was well liked by the neighbors and his kids, for he was always fixing something for someone. But he could also drive my mom nuts because he would try to fix something while she was using it. For example, he wanted to oil the sewing machine while she was sewing. She was tempted to sew his fingers to the jeans that she was mending. He was also a Mr. Clean. He liked things to be clean and shiny. He willingly polished the floors, his car, the tea kettle, his shoes. Once he had the surroundings shining at night, he would start shining his own body and teeth. He never seemed to be concerned about how the rest of us looked. I guess he thought that was my mother's duty. My dad was a union guy, a Bible reader, a very good dancer, a journeyman plumber, pipe fitter, a master gardener, and sometimes a Duck fan. He was an avid Democrat, a lover of big band music. A good evening for him would have been sitting in his big recliner watching the Lawrence Welk Show. Dad could surprise us. One time, two of my friends, boy friends, rode their horses over to where we lived, and they were giving rides to my brother and me. After the ride, Jack and I started bragging about our dad and his riding skills. Well, of course, we embellished the stories a bit. Well, right in the middle of our stories, my dad pulls up in his pickup. And he gets out of the pickup with his lunch pail, and he's looking really tired. But we rush over to him and say, Dad, would you ride one of these horses? Oh, my gosh. No, he didn't want to ride the horse. He kept walking, and we're following him and begging. He puts that lunch pail down, turns around, gets on one of those horses, and off he rides into the field. And my brother and I are just in awe. Most of the time in our family, my dad got the last word, and he proved it on the day that he died. The caregiver was helping my dad eat some ice cream, and my dad said, Now, wait a minute. She rolled her eyes back and looked the other way. When she turned around, my dad had died. I close with this quote by Umberto Eco. I believe that what we become depends on what our dads teach us at odd moments, when they aren't trying to teach us. We are formed by little scraps of wisdom. And our next speaker will be Glynis.
The many faces of fatherhood. My parents adopted me as a 5-year-old infant. 5-month-old infant. See, I can't even read my own typing. The story of my discovery of it at 27 is for another time. My father understood adoption issues far better than my mother because he himself had been adopted by his father. My dad, while not perfect, did instill in me a work ethic. By trade, he worked for Ma Bell as a lineman and ended up working in the toll transmission office. He taught my 2 younger brothers and me a lot about construction and electricity. He built houses in his spare time and sold them for a profit. We were his mandatory helpers. He once put together a board with nails in it and a battery on one end, a light bulb on the other. He added a potentiometer and an assortment of wires and resistors that could be connected in a variety of ways to make the light bulb glow. It was an early education on series versus parallel wiring, among other things. Before he allowed me to drive with my brand new driver's license, Dad made me show him I could jump a car battery and change a tire by myself. I have been grateful for that many times over. During all of those years, he carried on with what I think of as his gentle humor. Raised in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan with Swedish parents, he had learned only one line of Swedish. Translated, it means, "Kiss me quick, nothing makes me sick." That was Dad. I used to eat fresh tomatoes right out of our garden. I don't know if Dad was trying to deter me from this because I really ate a lot of them. But he told me I needed to be aware of the glassworms. "You can't see them," Dad teased. "They're invisible because they're clear, but they're still there." I must say, the notion gave me pause. To tease any of us out of a foul mood, he'd say, "I can see you smiling." We'd try our best not to smile. "You're starting to smile." You know, we're, "No, I'm not." "I can see your ears wiggling." Worked every time. My adoptive father also taught me unconditional love, even through my adolescence, which I would characterize as difficult for all those involved. While my adoptive father gave me so much, there was another unknown father who gave me what I consider one of the more important skills in my life, without even knowing of my existence. 3 years ago, after a decades-long search, I found my birth father's family. Frank Stewart had passed away in 2007. My half-sister said he wasn't a very warm man. He loved them, but he had 5 kids, and 4 of them inherited their mother's very serious psychiatric issues. This was a tough life. Frank worked at the Ford plant in Dearborn, Michigan, but for extra cash, he worked in nightclubs as a jazz and blues bass player. I moonlighted in clubs for many years as well, only I'm a classic rock and blues bass player. Of the many gifts I've received over my lifetime so far, the ability to express music was one of the biggest. My sons, now in their 40s, are both wonderful stepfathers. Despite their rocky teenage years with their stepfather, they learned how not to raise stepchildren. Instead, they're loving, steadfast stepfathers who are both raising healthy, successful, and happy kids. My step-granddaughter Lily said it best. Speaking to my son, she said, "I have to call him," meaning her biological father, "Daddy, but I'm going to call you Dad." That kind of love endures from generation to generation.
Fatherhood, to me. Fatherhood in our current time is a social institution that is as important as it has ever been. But it's also an aspect of our society that, in my opinion, has been judged to be less than valuable. We have many young men in our world who have grown up without the influence of a father in their lives. And the lack of fathers in our society has led to a fragility of masculine identity, and this is to our detriment. The largest subset of these men who have no fathers in their lives are the men who are locked up in prison. Oregon has about 14,000 people in prison right now, and most of them are men. Manhood itself is under society's scrutiny according to what is reported in our news outlets and seen as a thing to be suspicious of. I speak of the news about men who are sexual predators, the news of youngsters who commit crimes of passion and negligence, primarily men, and a lot of the comic strips and their attempts at self-deprecating humor. These social maladies ought to be a genuine concern for all men who are fathers. Fatherhood is dismissed as being not all that valuable, and a lot of that dismissiveness comes from men themselves. Our society would benefit from an increased appreciation of fathers. We speak of our own fathers, but what these essays miss out on, in my opinion, are the hard things about life that children need to know about. Fathers are the ones who ought to be responsible for teaching children about the difficult things in life, the things that don't make it into much of our national conversation. Our primitive societies held men responsible for the nurturing of their sons. Young men were expected to learn from the elders of their tribe, and there were rituals that codified this. This tradition is one of the reasons our current evangelical churches are as successful as they are. They tell boys and men, you need to do this and follow up with that, and you will succeed. The unchurched and the religious institutions that don't address that need are deficient. And I believe Unitarian Universalism is one of those deficient institutions. How often do you see men with young sons entering our doors? we have little to offer young men who are seeking to become good fathers. Becoming a good man does require learning about the hard things in life. It means learning to treat women with respect. It means that greater happiness lies in helping others, not helping oneself. And it means knowing how to become a leader and be a leader. Boys, by their very nature of being young human beings, are not responsible. A hard lesson is that you can depend on a man. You can't depend on a boy. Another hard lesson is that a man does what is necessary, even if it's the hardest decision or the most unpopular one. There's a lot of literature about boys coming of age and becoming men, but one of my favorites is a book written by Robert Ruark. It's titled The Old Man and the Boy. And in this tale, it is the grandfather who teaches the boy how to become a man. The old man teaches the boy that it's very important to be a gentleman, how to put others before himself, and to respect the rights of others. He teaches the boy how to be responsible for the hunting they do and how to know about the natural world and to be a militant conservator of it. My own father did a pretty good job of teaching me these things in his own way. My family raised livestock while I was growing up. I was taught how to be responsible for my animals, how to feed and tend them, how to midwife them when necessary, and when true calamity struck, how to render the ultimate kindness. He had his downfallings, as all people do, an appetite for tobacco and alcohol that hurt his health, an occasional bout with a compulsion to gamble, but he treated my mother and my sister with respect and required that I do the same. My father was 41 years old when I was born, and this limited him in his ability to have fun with us children. But he loved us, he provided for us, and he relished being on the land and being independent, at least somewhat independent, because of this. So I can't be sure if I've done as good a job as he did. My own children seem to be self-contained and competent, at least mostly. They hold different values than I do, but that's okay. And they have chosen good men to be their partners, something I worried about when they were growing up. I respect them, and I'm proud of them, and that's about all I could hope for when they came into my life. Madam Chairman.
We have a couple of minutes before we sing our song. Anyone like to make a comment? I want to thank all of you wonderful writers. It was absolutely marvelous. We really appreciate it. Anybody else have something to say? Let's give them a hand. At this time, let's stand as you are able. 3:18, we would be one.
Join singing. to greater service, with love and justice, strive to make us free.
By Gabriel Garcia Marquez. A man knows when he is growing old because he begins to look like his father.
Sorry about that. That really tickled my funny bone. Thank you. We extinguish our chalice with these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. As I extinguish the chalice, let's sing Go Lift It Up. Please join us for conversation and coffee.